Joining us here in LA, Democratic strategist Matthew Littman, CNN political commentator and Trump supporter John Phillips.
Also with us, CNN's senior political analyst Ron Brownstein and talk radio host Mo Kelly. Great to have you all here.
Welcome to you all.
Well, some big ideas from the president, small on detail. And Ron, the reality is so far there's no specifics from the president on how any of this will actually be paid for and no plan as to how this will actually make it through Congress.
Yeah, look, I thought it was a more measured, more controlled, at times even more empathetic speech than we have seen from him before. But I think it is emphatically a mistake to view this as a reset. If anything, it was a doubling down on his determination to redefine the Republican Party around this populist, nationalist agenda, in which he even opened a new front tonight by going after not only his familiar target of undocumented immigration, but for the first time as president, indicating that he would support reducing legal immigration as well. And if you look at the budget document that he put out the other day, in which he said that he wanted to increase defense spending by cutting domestic programs, which primarily aim at younger people, while completely exempting the entitlement programs for the elderly, which go more toward his constituency of older and especially lower income whites. You have a coherent strategy here, John. I mean, that's the real message for Democrats. They are dealing with an opponent, an adversary who has a theory of the case, a majority, a coalition that he is trying to build, and an agenda that he is systematically targeting toward them. And that was the real message I took out of this speech tonight. He knows where he is going, and the question is whether he can bring a majority of the country along with him.
Mo, to bring you in here, what did you make of the speech? What message did you take from it? I mean, the president's saying the time for small thinking is over.
It's nice that he said that, but I guess reality is going to be what's more important. We know that this president was presidential for all of 1 hour, on one day, across 40 days. So it's more important to see what he does on Wednesday, what he does moving forward. Because if he can't remain presidential, if something should happen that's negative or someone should not agree with him, like a justice, if he can't remain presidential, then this speech was only an insincere and inauthentic moment and not actually a turning point in this administration. I'm not sure we saw the true President Trump tonight. I think we saw a momentary glimpse of a president, but I expect more of a petulant and petty Trump going forward, because that's who he's been for 39 of the 40 days.
Well, Mo, to be fair, it was 60 minutes and 15 seconds. Let's get into some of the details right now on immigration. Ron brought this up. The president floated the idea of a merit-based system like they have in Canada and Australia. And he also opened the door just a little to a bipartisan deal on immigration reform. This is what he said.
I believe that real and positive immigration reform is possible as long as we focus on the following goals: to improve jobs and wages for Americans, to strengthen our nation's security, and to restore respect for our laws.
So, John Phillips, the Republicans in Congress go for this. And what about his base? They didn't vote for immigration reform. They voted for round them up and kick them out.
Well, he was very tough on immigration today, and we're a country, not a flop house, so I think the country is going to be behind him as he presses along with those programs. As a Republican, I thought tonight's speech was so refreshing. I'm used to George W. Bush giving these speeches, which is like watching a drunk man drive down an icy road. What he did tonight is going to cause his poll numbers to shoot through the roof. Those programs with that delivery is a winner, and it should scare every Democrat right now in Washington, D.C., especially those red state Democrats, because they're going to look at these poll numbers go up. And many of them, 10 of them, in fact, are up for re-election in 2018 in states that he won. And when he would talk about things that were popular, he'd talk about bringing jobs back home, and all the Republicans would be cheering. And you could tell that Nancy Pelosi put the directive out to just sit there stone-faced. And every time the camera would cut to her, she would just sit there with the same expression on her face. Well, it's hard to be the face of a movement if your face has no movement. And that's what we saw from them tonight. And I'm telling you, he's putting them behind the 8 ball if he can stick with this.
I got to bring him out there as the Democrat, because you were twitching at points there.
Did you see how I remained calm?
Very calm.
But you still
More calm than usual. Yeah, right. But let me just say this. First of all, you say Trump's poll numbers are going to go through the roof. They're not. Here's the biggest problem with what Trump did tonight is he's already president. This was like a campaign speech, but he's actually the president. So his plan on immigration reform, he's not going to have an immigration reform going through Congress. His plan on infrastructure, he talked about it tonight. Where is the actual infrastructure plan? His plan on tax reform. Where is the tax reform plan? His plan on the Affordable Care Act. Where is the Affordable Care Act plan? He is actually president. He's been president for 40 days. Put forward your plans. Let's start to see what your plans are. He's not putting them forward. The American people are going to start to get a little bit angry because it's not happening.
One plan he did put forward, and we heard about it when he signed the executive action, was bringing together this new group voice, as it were, as it's known as, really calling attention to crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. Take a listen to what he said specifically, and then we'll talk about the reaction.
I have ordered the Department of Homeland Security to create an office to serve American victims. The office is called VOICE, Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement. We are providing a voice to those who have been ignored by our media and silenced by special interests.
The groaning could not be escaped there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Donald Trump is trying to demonize immigrants. That's part of what he's been doing here. But here's the thing there about Donald Trump. He's saying that there's this big problem on the border that actually has not existed for a while, right? Immigration has been going down across the border for the last 16, 17 years. What he wants to do is create this big ICE force where he hires thousands more people. He wants to spend $25 billion to put up this border wall. By the way, where is the plan for the actual border wall? This is all huge government spending, 10% more for the military, these giant increases in spending, cutting taxes. But he's the president. Where are the plans? Put forward that budget, put forward that plans. He's not doing it. At some point, time's going to start getting short. We're already 40 days in. There are no plans.
Okay, well, you mentioned the issue about Obamacare. We did get some details of his vision for a possible replacement plan for the Affordable Care Act. This is what he said.
Tonight, I am also calling on this Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare with reforms that expand choice, increase access, lower costs, and at the same time provide better health care.
So, Ron Brownstein, to you, is any of that actually going to happen? And was it a good idea for the president to essentially call Obamacare a disaster and then turn to the Democrats and ask for their help in trying to fix it?
He's not going to get their help. But yes, he did, I think. Look, he has to intervene. The effort to repeal and replace Obamacare has quickly run into the mud in Congress because of really, at the moment, irreconcilable differences among Republicans. The core problem they have goes back to what we were talking about before. If you look at what the Republican coalition has become, they stand to lose from almost all of the major ideas that Republicans are putting forward as an alternative. I mean, the core idea that the president talked about tonight was deregulating insurance, allowing it to be sold along state lines, eliminating minimum benefit requirements, and in other ways trying to reduce the initial cost of premiums. The problem is that if you do that and you unravel the risk sharing, the winners in that process are primarily younger, healthier people at a time when younger people are voting primarily Democratic, and the big losers are older working age people at a time when a majority of Donald Trump's votes came from white people over 45. And that core conundrum of finding an alternative to Obamacare that does not hurt their own voters, I think, is a huge hurdle that Republicans are facing in Congress. And all of the ideas that he put forward tonight, such as selling insurance across state lines, would only compound that problem. It's not clear that they can find a way out of this conundrum, but he does, if they are going to find a way, he is going to have to get his hands a lot dirtier than he has so far.
John, to bring you in, I mean, you hear what Ron was just saying there. This isn't just an issue with can you get Democrats on board, can you even get Republicans on board for the kind of Obamacare replacement he outlined tonight?
Well, this isn't a curveball. This is something that he ran on. He ran explicitly on replacing and repealing Obamacare. We saw a press conference earlier today that Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, gave, or our own Manu Raju, interviewed him about that. It looks like the plan that Trump is going to come in with is going to be something very similar to the plan that Paul Ryan has been pushing. So I believe there's more commonality between congressional Republicans and President Trump than most people think.
Okay, we also heard from the president saying he would ask Congress for a huge increase in infrastructure spending.
To launch our national rebuilding, I will be asking Congress to approve legislation that produces a $1 trillion investment in infrastructure of the United States, financed through both public and private capital, creating millions of new jobs.
So, Mo, to you, given that there's no plan to pay for this and everything else the Republicans are dealing with, and the fact that so many Republicans are worried about the deficit and they don't like spending, again, What are the chances of this getting through?
You basically took my answer. Bill Clinton said many years ago, this is about math. $1 trillion infrastructure project, a $20 billion wall, tax cuts. How is he going to pay for this? It's not feasible. It's not even practical. It's not possible. But ultimately, Donald Trump is showing us that he has an oversimplification of these issues. He just realized two days ago that Obamacare and health care was very complicated. He has not put in the time, and he does not fully understand what is necessary in being leader of the free world and also commander-in-chief.
No, Matt, the president proposing a $1 trillion infrastructure project. Someone's going to have to show him the money.
Yeah, so here's the thing. He's not planning on spending $1 trillion on infrastructure. He said a public-private partnership. Then he pointed to what Dwight Eisenhower did in the 50s with the highways. That wasn't a public-private partnership, right? That was public money used to build the nation's highways. And that's the part about infrastructure. If you want to build tunnels, you don't need a private partnership. There's no money for private companies to make in that sort of thing. You want to build bridges, there's no money. So we all think, wow, infrastructure sounds great. We're going to hire a lot of people. Trump is talking about something very different. He hasn't told us what the specifics of the plan are, but a public-private partnership doesn't work when you're building infrastructure projects.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I want to get to one of the last points from his address, and it was on national security and some tough talk from the president.
We are also taking strong measures to protect our nation from radical Islamic terrorism. It is not compassionate, but reckless to allow uncontrolled entry from places where proper vetting cannot occur. We cannot allow a beachhead of terrorism to form inside America. We cannot allow our nation to become a sanctuary for extremists.
So, John, the president seemed to really enjoy using the term radical Islamic terrorism, even though his own national security advisor has argued against using those exact words.
Well, that's the threat, and I don't know why we should expect him to pretend like that's not the threat right now. He ran on this. Again, this is not a curveball. This is a fastball. This is something that he talked about again and again and again during the campaign, and it's something that people who voted for him expect him to address, and he put it front and center tonight.
But the thing about it is that when he talks about the fact that we're not properly vetting, it takes 2 years for refugees to come to the United States. We vet in a much different way. In Europe, they can come over by boat. They can't really do that here. We have an excellent vetting process already in place. Again, he's trying to create an enemy where there is none in some of these cases. We do have a problem with terrorism. There's no doubt about it. But he's speaking about it in a way that's completely wrong.
Okay, a lot more to get to from the president's address to Congress, but we will take a short break. I know you guys are sticking around, so we'll catch up with you all in a short time.